Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practices Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. And man, do I have a special edition for you today. If you're looking to be great in restorative dentistry, there are some secrets you're going to want to learn along the way. And I've got one of my favorite people in all of dentistry, Dr. Bob Margeas, on today to share his top secrets for a successful career in dentistry. Do not miss this. Do me a favor. Grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in a few seconds.
The Best Practices Show with Kirk Barrett is brought to you exclusively by ACT Dental, the ultimate provider of dental practice management solutions for dentists and their teams. ACT Dental is committed to helping you build a better practice and a better life. If you're looking to grow your production, motivate your team, get back on track, and create the practice you've always dreamed about, look no further. Give us a call at 800-851-8186 or visit us at actdental.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show. Thank you so much for watching. Love your comments, love the feedback, love everything. And keep sending that to us as we continue to produce more shows on the things that you want to talk about with all the experts in dentistry. And today is no exception. I've got one of the best experts, one of my favorite people. You're going to get a chance to meet him in just a second. You know, and keep sharing too. Right now, there's over 25,000 followers on Facebook, and over 100,000 of you have gone to iTunes. And I don't even know how that works, but keep it up, and we love it. Couple show notes before we get started. We are shooting this live on Facebook. So as you're watching this, if you have questions, continue to add them to the feed, and I'll ask the master himself while we're talking to him. And then later on, if you have questions, continue to add those also, and we'll try to get you the best answers because we want you to get the most out of this. Now, my guest today, I met this guy years ago, and you know, I saw him speak first, and I'm like, wow, he's so good. And I was a little intimidated at first. Then I went to the bar, and he put me in a headlock right away. And I was like, all right, I like this guy. So and when you and I have been friends for years, and we met at the Seattle Study Club Symposium, which was amazing. And you speak everywhere. You're one of the most top-rated speakers in all of the Study Club networks and throughout the entire meetings association all over. But if people don't know who Bob Margeas is, give us a little background on who you are, where you practice, and your story.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's so fun to be here. We've been trying to get this to go for many, many months, and we finally found some time because I have the week off. I'm in Michigan, where my wife is a practicing dentist, and I usually come here Wednesday evening to Sunday. I'm a practicing dentist in Des Moines, Iowa. Practiced there for over 30 years, and my schedule is I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I usually fly to Michigan from Wednesday to Sunday if I'm not lecturing somewhere. But if I am lecturing somewhere, I usually fly after the lecture Friday night, and then I leave Sunday night and continue doing that back and forth. But this week, I've been here with my wife, and I got to tell you, wives, they're incredible. I mean, What my wife has to do to keep a practice and to run a family and take kids here and there, I have a new appreciation for, what it takes. Because having gotten married at 53, I didn't really know what it was like. And,
right.
It's been a great marriage. My wife is awesome. And so really, I've had a great career in dentistry, and I'm very happy to share some of the things that I've learned over the years, because it hasn't been the easiest thing from the beginning, but it's been such a great career.
Yeah, it's awesome. Two things about that. Number one, I think every husband should do that, because this morning you were making lunches, running kids to school and things like that. And you're like, wow, this is harder than I thought it was, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the second thing is, now I have to say this because you're an incredible speaker, incredible teacher. You don't practice on Park Avenue. I want you to give some perspective about your practice, because we're going to learn some great things from you today, but you don't have this high end, diamond tier practice type of thing.
No, I've been fortunate to practice in Iowa. I'm in Des Moines. It's the capital of Iowa, but it's hardworking people that people want to use their insurance. And I tell you, I do belong to a couple insurance plans. I belong to Delta, and I belong to Wellmark Blue. Why? Because the reimbursement has been good for me. So I kind of have an insurance-based practice inside of a cosmetic and restorative and implant practice. Because if I was relying just on the big cases, I would not be successful. And I know dentists who are graduating want to do all these big cases, but I can tell you, the single crown or the quadrant dentistry can be very, very profitable for you. Because today, really with the automation of the laboratories, you can get a high quality crown for $125 or less, when in fact Delta Dental is reimbursing me around $950 without a buildup. And with the time that it takes, you can have a successful practice on some insurance plans. So I don't think that when someone's trying to teach you just to be insurance free, I'm envious of those dentists because it is a little bit more difficult to have those type of practices. So we'll go over some of those things and how we manage that, during the course of this time we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into the how, let's talk about the why. I always love that. Why is it so important right now more than ever in dentistry to figure out what's important as you start to define success? Because you and I were talking about this yesterday. Success isn't always money in dentistry.
Yeah, when you first graduate, back 30 years ago, I used to think $25,000 in student loans was a lot of money. I remember it was $306.67 every month I was paying, for my loan. I'm thinking, wow, am I ever going to get this paid off? And now you're talking about people getting out of debt with $250,000 to $500,000 and then expecting to be able to pay that back. And what are they doing? More and more dentists are signing up for some of the corporate dentistry, and I don't blame them. Why? Because they have bills to pay. It would be difficult for me, and I'm a successful dentist, to be able to pay an associate right out of school $150,000. But there's a trade-off for that. For that $150,000 that they're paying you, their expectations are you to produce. And to be honest with you, sometimes your thinking may get in the way of what's really right for the patient. I've always felt that doing the right thing and being honest with your patients and authentic is going to make you much more money than having a goal to say, hey, this is how much money I need to make and I want to make, and you're only motivated by money.
Yeah, absolutely. I quote you all the time in my seminars. Your case presentation process, what you say to your patients is one of the best I've ever seen. We're going to do a completely separate show on that because it's awesome, but it's so true in that whole process. Now, you've been practicing for 32 years?
Well, going on 32 this year. It's
okay.
Great.
And when you started, you were broke, super broke.
I'll tell you how broke I was.
Uh-huh.
I was working as an associate. The first associateship I had right out of school, it was called River City Dental Care. It was in Iowa City, and we were open 7 days a week. We were open, Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning till 9, Saturday 8 to 5, Sundays noon to 5. And what kind of people do we get? We got professors and things that couldn't come in during the week on the Saturdays and Sundays. But the problem was there was only myself and another dentist. And what happened was I would have to work 12 days on before I had 2 days off because every other weekend I had to be on. And, it was tough. And I'll tell you that, my first job when I was making $1,050 every 2 weeks. And when I left him after a year, I owed him $3,000. Mm-hmm. That's pretty difficult to make ends meet back then. But I'll tell you, I spent my money wisely. I spent my money on education, which I think is very important. Yeah. And more important than having the BMW, the country club, and we all want to have a nice house. I lived in a $115,000 house from 93 to 2008, but I had my priority was really to learn as much dentistry as I could and educate myself to be able to do cases that came in.
Yeah, and that was your first key is just really a commitment to CE, because tell us about the number of hours. You had no money, but you made a commitment to a really strong commitment to great CE early on.
Yeah, when I graduated in 86, I did a 1-year residency. But by the time from 86 to 1991, 5 years later, I had already received my fellowship in the AGD, which requires 500 hours of CE. I had over 500 hours my first 5 years. But the reason why I did that was really when you got out of dental school, you got the basics, you got a good education, but did I know how to do veneers or did I know how to restore an implant case? No, but I spent the money to be able to do those types of things early on in my career. And let me tell you, as a young dentist, I would find a mentor. And you know what? Guys like me and people who are in the business, guys like Kois, guys like Picos, guys like Michael Cohen, they want to help people, and you see somebody who is really wanting to be good. I'm going to show them everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about some of your early influences, because I love this. When you were starting to take courses, who were some of your early people that you enjoyed
Yeah, out of my dental school career, probably the biggest influence was Jerry Dennehy. Gerald Dennehy was at the Department of Operative Dentistry, and he was really big on conservative dentistry, freehand composite bonding, and adhesives. And back then, when I was in dental school, porcelain veneers were really not that big. I was fortunate to work in the Center for Clinical Research doing porcelain veneers. I did my first case in May of 1986 after I had graduated. And I remember doing it live at the Five Seasons Center in Cedar Rapids, where my first veneer, I put it on the assistant's cart and I took the air water syringe and I broke it in front of 150 dentists. I had not done very many cases. But my early influences were guys like Buddy Mopper on composites. Bob Nixon was a huge influence on me on porcelain and porcelain veneers. John Coyce, obviously, from the early 90s, where I first saw him at the AACD meeting in San Diego. I would say that really changed my career. And I have fellow classmates that to this day, they take their 15 hours of CE a year just to maintain their licenses. They've never progressed. You gotta continually learn and spend the money. Spending the money on CE is probably the most valuable thing that I've done.
Right. Now, answer this question, because I know you get this question and I get it too all the time. Young dentists come, they go, they say, I know I would love to take that course, but I can't afford to do it, or I can't afford to be away from my practice. Give us your thoughts on that question.
Because you're thinking about the money, you're thinking, oh, this course is $5,000. That's going to take me a long time to make the $5,000 back, plus the airfare and the travel. I think it's probably more important to find a way, even if you have to borrow the money. You're already in debt to begin with from student loans and things like that. If you could borrow a little bit more, if I was a young dentist coming out of school today, I wouldn't necessarily go through a residency or a prosthodontic residency. I would go to a teaching center, like the Coyce Center, and you're going to spend $50,000 on tuition, but the knowledge that you're gaining is going to make you many, many times over what it costs you to do. And it sounds like a lot of money, and it is. I'm not underestimating that. But find somewhere else to sacrifice. Instead of buying the big house or the new car, build on your education.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's bigger than the education, too, and you get to see this, is going to the Coyce Center isn't just about the education. It's about keeping the fire lit, because you go there, you get in the right neighborhood with the right people. It changes the way you think. You come back on fire, and it's an essential piece to running a business. Same thing with Seattle Study Club Symposium. People always say, well, I can't afford to go. I'm like, you can't afford not to go. You can't, because you come back, you're so charged up when you come back from these events.
Yeah, when you look at, Kirk, when I told you I worked 12 days on, 2 days off, and then I worked 5 days a week. And then I said I went to 4 days a week. And I know with your teaching and your practice management company, you advocate, you need time off. I couldn't go 5 days a week. I went 4 days a week, and you have to look at being efficient in the time that you're there. I work 3 days a week, my associate works 4. Why am I more productive? Because I'm more efficient. And you know what, too, Kirk? When you get out, you really want to be around like-minded dentists. When you go to the Seattle Study Club or you go to the Coyce Center, you see these other dentists who are successful, who are doing very well. You start feeling like, well, gosh, if they can do it, I can do it. Man who says it cannot be done should not interrupt man doing it.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Now, you mentioned mentors. So back in the old days when you've been in this longer than I have, but there used to be a word called preceptorships where there was a huge responsibility. Now there isn't that much of it around, but mentors still exist. So if I'm a young dentist, I'm a 32, because we watch the metrics on this. A lot of young dentists are watching this. We even have dental school students watching this now. How would I find a mentor? Bob, where do I find one?
You know what? I was fortunate. In 1986, when I graduated and I was moving to Des Moines, I met a dentist that I had known because he was married to a relative of mine who was placing implants since 1971, who learned from L.D. Pankey in 1963. His name was Paul Polydorn. And when I went to his office, he was doing incredible cases. And he said to me, a lot of dentists aren't going to want to show you things when you're a dentist because they look at you as competition. But when you're a student and you're a junior or you're a senior and you can go into these different dental offices and these dentists want to help. He was my mentor. He's the one that really believed in what I was doing. And he shared everything. A lot of dentists are I don't want to share, like I'm not going to teach them how to do a veneer, or I'm not going to do, show them how to do implants. He used to say to me, "You think you're so good?" He'd take me down the basement and he would say, "See all these files of the patients? See all these dead files?" He goes, "You think all these people are dead? They're not dead. Those people are people who left you because they didn't like you for some reason." And then he'd take me outside the door and he'd say, "See all these buildings and all these people around here? Do you think all these people come to you? No, it doesn't matter. You're not in competition with other dentists. You're in competition with yourself to be the best." Yep. And I say that when you talk about mentorship, find a mentor. Search out people who are in the community that have been successful that you want to emulate. And go there and talk to them and say, "Hey, I want to be like you." And I will tell you, when I took Buddy Mopper's composite course, oh my gosh, I took it 3 times. I took the course 3 times because I was a failure. And he said, keep on practicing. I practiced, and you know what? It got me to the point where I could start teaching with him. And then I got to start teaching with Bob Nixon, and it all worked out extremely well for me.
Yeah, and I think the key there is you said find the mentor, because mentors don't find you. You have to be proactive, and you got to pick somebody and say, "Hey, look, you're going to mentor me," as evidenced by even Coyce. You went to see him, and now you teach there. It's pretty cool how that whole process works.
Absolutely, because I walked around the AACD meetings, and I was in awe of a lot of these people, and I said, I would love to be like them someday. And I kept on learning and learning, because sometimes you go to these meetings and you're just totally intimidated. But, you should approach these guys. And when you go to a meeting, approach them and say, "Hey, I really appreciate what you're doing," because, we all have egos, and everybody you want to help people who want to be successful. And I'm proud of that. And I've tried to help a number of people. I have an open door policy. Any dentist can come into my office and watch what I'm doing. And when I lecture, I say, if you think I'm not using these products that I talk about, come to my office on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, non-invited. Just show up at the office and come in and say, "Open my operatory and see, what am I using? This is what I am using." And I've had one guy came in and took me up on it. He came in from Duluth, Minnesota. And I said, "Yeah, come on back. Watch what I'm doing."
Yeah. Now, if you're watching this, just hit the pause button and create an action plan and say, just show up, because Bob is very giving. He'll share everything, and it'll be one of the best days you could possibly ever invest in yourself and your own education. So good stuff, buddy. I really appreciate that. Now, another key you mentioned, before we were talking about efficiency. Tell us why that's such a big key to learn early and then even re-engineer later on in your career.
Yeah, when you're in dental school, and I teach at the school in operative, I tell the students, just because you have 3 hours to do this composite or the amalgam, I want you to look at it from an efficiency standpoint. Because when you get out of dental school, you can't take an hour to do an amalgam or a composite. Now, when you're first starting out, obviously you need to take the time to master that. And so for me, when it comes to efficiency, if I'm doing a crown that takes me an hour, and I'm getting paid $1,200, and then I have an associate who takes an hour and a half, I'm going to make much more money than he is, because I'm doing the same procedure in the amount of time that is less. And so for me, you have to visualize where you want the end to be, and you have to just approach it with the fact that I'm a machine. I can prepare this tooth. I've done it hundreds of times. And literally, I have worked on typodonts and dentiforms during my career. I still, to this day, Kirk, I do tons of hands-on, and I got to do live demonstrations. I practice in my teaching center. I practice the layering. I practice surface texturing, because you have to be able to do it fast. This year at the Chicago Midwinter, I'm a little bit apprehensive, because I'm presenting a live patient diastema closure. There's no cheating on that, because some people may show a case that's incredible, but they don't tell you that it took them, 3 or 4 months to do it, and thousands of dollars a laboratory bill. And when you have to do it live, you can't hide that. And so I think that's critical to that you want to really be efficient in order to be financially successful.
Yeah, absolutely. You always want to do the best work you can, but also you can't charge enough when you take 2.5 or 3 hours to do a crown. You just can't.
Right.
And so there's a big advantage to being a young dentist and going into a larger practice that maybe puts a little bit of pressure on you, because you're going to learn speed, efficiency, and you're also going to learn maybe what you don't like. And by that time, you become a little bit seasoned about your self-awareness, and you can start to create the practice that you do ultimately want. So there's a lot to be said for that.
And I've concentrated, when we talk about efficiency, I'm not efficient at doing endo. I'm not efficient at doing, third molars. And believe me, I'm not against dentists, general dentists doing endo and oral surgery and doing implants. You just have to be able to be competent enough and not do it just for the money. And I'll tell you, because I believe in the super generalist. I'm not necessarily one of them, because I don't do all of those things, but I know some very, very good general dentists who do great implants. They do endo, they do ortho, they do a lot of those things. If you do it well, I'm all for it. If you don't do it well, I'm not for it, because I've seen it where dentists have made a lot of money, but from a standpoint of having ethics or having morals, I wouldn't want to be them.
Yeah, the older you get, the more you embrace the word joy. Like when you spend your time doing things that you love, and you and I were talking about, I love my cup. Like, just spend more time doing the things you love to do, and it all kind of takes care of itself.
We talked too about, like just making money or having time. I'll relate a story early on in my career. I had worked on a young patient, like 2 years old, that had nursing bottle caries. All the teeth were bombed out. I'm working on this 2-year-old. I did the best job I could at the time. And so when I went to bill the patient, I didn't feel comfortable charging my full fee, because it really wasn't as good a work as I could do, but it was the best I could do at that time. So when I gave her the bill, and I said, I don't feel comfortable. Just pay what you think is what you think is fair. Mm-hmm. And she writes a check for $70, and I'm thinking, $70. I mean, wow. That was probably $400 or $500, and I was upset about it. And then a month goes by, and she calls up and says, one of those composites you put on fell off. So now you're thinking, you come back, now you got to do it. You got paid $70. And when she walks out, she gives me a check for $200. I said, there's no charge for this. She says, when you asked me what it was worth, she says, I had $140 in my pocket. It was worth half the money that I had. And it was a lesson to me to think that, hey, you can't just charge money, because that was a lesson that, people maybe can't afford everything, but to her, it was worth half her money, So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, don't do stuff just for money. Do the right thing, and the money will follow. That it sounds corny, but you know what, Kirk? If you're honest and genuine and tell the truth, we've said it before. I'm just a referee. Mm-hmm. I'm just a referee. I call it as I see it.
Yeah. Now give us a little snippet of that, because the way you look at your case presentation and the truth aspect and the authenticity, give us some philosophy behind that whole process, because that served you well for 30 years.
Yeah. Early on, I wish I had this attitude or mentality that I don't need the money. I'm in a position where I've made enough money that I really don't need the money. And when you feel like, when you're talking to patients and they need the crown, and I say, Kirk, it appears that this tooth is cracked. My suggestion would be to put a crown on it. I said, hopefully the crack doesn't go through and goes to the nerve. Otherwise, you're going to need endodontic therapy, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't do it, there's a possibility the tooth could crack. But nobody dies by using a cracked tooth. The worst thing that can happen is, if you don't do this crown, is you may need an implant. And half the time the patients will look up and they'll say to me, oh, it doesn't bother me that much. It only bothers me when I'm eating a taco chip. I say, fine, it's your mouth, your time, your money. When you're ready to do it, let me know. I don't follow through with those patients to see why they haven't done it. What? Because they're adults. I think when you try to hound a lot of people, I think if you tell them the truth and let them make the decision based on the facts, when you start feeling bad for patients, bad stuff happens. Ritter and I have talked about that before, and Ritter has said to me, when you feel bad for a patient and you try to do something that's not the right thing to do, bad stuff happens. Now I own the problem. Absolutely.
So love that. Now, another key to your success has been your team. You have some people that have been with you for a very long time. They're amazing. Now, some young dentists watching this go, hey, look, first of all, Bob, how do you even search for the right person? How do you find the right person? And how do you keep the right person? Give us some thoughts on that.
I really hire people based on personality and the ability to be able to communicate well. And the same thing to me was with a dentist. I could technically be the best dentist, but not have the communication skill to have anybody want anything. Most of the successful dentists I know aren't the best clinically. It's the one, if you have the ability to have really good communication and great clinical skills, nothing can stop you. But with my staff, I don't micromanage the staff. All my staff, Kirk, are cross-trained. My front desk. Now, if you think about this as a practice management consultant, you would love my practice from the reason of efficiency. I have 3 full-time hygienists, a part-time hygienist. I have 1 dental assistant, and my associate has 1 dental assistant. I have 1 front desk, and now I hired a part-timer for 2 days a week. Now, my front desk is a certified dental assistant. So when I only have 1 dental assistant, we're working in the back, an emergency comes in, what does my front desk do? My front desk goes in the back, takes an x-ray, puts it up on the screen, goes back to the front, answers the phone, puts checks in, confirms patients. Listen, that is a value, for me, because otherwise the patients would either be sitting out in the front waiting for my assistant to get done with the procedure I have. The other gal that I hired is a dental hygienist. So there are times when I have a new patient that wants to get in and they can't get in for several months. What does my front gal at the front do? She goes back and cleans her teeth. You gotta, and you can't have all the clicks. Believe me, we've talked about it. I've fired a few people. I don't like it because I'm non-confrontational. All I want is the people to come in and do their work. And sometimes they'll come in at 8:05 when the patient, and I say, listen, all I'm asking you is to come in at 8. And she said, well, the problem is I have 2 young kids and I have to drop them off at school and I can't take them too early. So you know what? That to me was understanding. You can't just be, force this is this and this. You want to do the best that you can and be a little bit flexible.
Right.
But sometimes you can't. But when we have a problem in the office and we have these clicks, or the hygienist isn't getting along with the front desk, or one assistant doesn't like this assistant because you took my instruments or this, I say, listen, we're going survivor mode.
Yeah, now describe that, because I love survivor mode, and you've shared this with me many times. So you go survivor mode whenever you have challenges on your team. What is that?
And I go to the staff. I say, listen, tomorrow we're going survivor mode. Somebody here is getting voted off the island. It may be me. I may be getting voted off. I don't need the job. So either straighten it out, or somebody's getting fired. I don't know who it's going to be. If you want to vote me out, great. I'll move to Michigan and be here full time. But, that's what it usually calms everybody down. And then everybody, seems to get along. Nobody has a job description, Kirk. My hygienist, if they don't have a patient, they're in the front. They're putting checks in the deposit. They're confirming patients. They're pulling charts. They're taking the other hygienist instruments and sterilizing for them. I mean, it's amazing that, that it's like that. It's not like that all the time and everything hunky-dory, but for the most part, it's awesome.
Right. Now, time out, because that flies in the face of everything that I go, oh, gosh. Now, you say they don't have job descriptions, but they always know their expectations. Describe what that means.
Yes. You need to have, obviously, a job description. So when I say this, I don't want my hygienist to say, your job is only to be a hygienist and clean teeth and this and that. Their job is what my mom used to say in the restaurant business: see and do. See and do. And haste makes waste. And she said, you want to do it right. So if all our staff knows that if their patient doesn't show up, they're on the phone trying to get another patient in, or they're trying to confirm patients, or they're pulling charts, or they'll ask, do you need any help with the hygiene instruments, or do you need any help with this? I don't want them going in the back room and on Facebook and doing their thing. There's no downtime in my office. We don't have enough time to be downtime. Yeah. So that's what I mean. So really, they have an unspoken kind of job description. They know what their job is to do, but they also have other jobs that maybe not in the manual.
Yeah. Tell us about the craziest team member you've ever had, because you've had a few, not many, but is there anything that stands out, like a story that you're like, okay, this is just getting weird? Oh yeah.
You know what? I mean, I've had some that would maybe not, when I had only one dental assistant, it was very critical that they showed up. And sometimes, they would call and say, then I have to cancel a whole day out. And my assistant, I have one dental assistant. When I'm lecturing now, they say, well, what do you do when she's sick? She's never sick. She's been with me since 2001. She had a gallbladder out on a Wednesday, and she's back to work on a Monday. But I would say that I've had maybe some people that maybe didn't answer the phone right, or kind of tick some patients off. But I've had very few and far between, really staff that have been an issue. The ones that have been an issue probably have been more motivated by money, and maybe they're clocking in and clocking out at different times where you have to kind of look at those type of things. But really no major issues with staff. The ones I have now, they've been with me for years, and I think one of the reasons why is I offer a very good compensation plan, not just an hourly wage, but they get sick time, they get health insurance, they get a 401k with a cash balance plan. So they get 10% of their salary in retirement. So they don't want to leave.
Yeah, and you
go
keep
ahead.
going. No, you go.
Yeah, okay. So I asked my staff this. I said, you guys are all free agents. Think about this with a term. You're a free agent, but my expectations are for you to stay in your contract for the whole year. And when January comes around, feel free to go out and search the market. If you're not happy here, you're a free agent like the NFL or baseball. My expectation is for you to stay with your commitment here, but when you're done with the commitment, you're a free agent. Go out. If you think that you can have a job that you like better or you can make more money, bring it back to me. Give me an opportunity to match the offer. But one thing I don't want, Kirk, I do not want staff that does not want to be in my office.
Yeah.
If they're not happy, so be it. If they feel they can get another job, so be it. Because my staff, if they're happy, they're not going to look for another job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've come to the same conclusion too. And, I told my team years ago, I think we're not looking for perfect. Everybody's got to be all in. You know what I mean? That's like the most important thing. If you're all in, we're good for the most part. And so good stuff. Now,
totally agree.
Yeah. Now, another key piece to being successful in dentistry is having the right type of patients, because not every patient is the right patient for your practice. Give us some perspective on that, because you're a pretty nice guy. You don't like confrontation, but how have you created such a practice? Because you didn't even have a website until a couple of years ago. Like, you could be the worst marketer that's ever lived. Now you have a website, but before that, you still did an amazing job of attracting the right type of patients and keeping them. Give us some perspective on that.
When I merged my practice with Dr. Polydorn at the time, and I remember when I bought his practice, this is a great tip for young dentists. Don't look at the facility and the equipment and all that, because when I went into his office, I said, wow, this is 1,100 square feet, and the parking lot's not very good, and the equipment's old. He says, you're buying my patients. You can go out and buy brand new equipment. You're buying a profitable practice that if you can do what I do, you can net a lot of money. And so don't look at the structure to begin with, or the facility. The patients that he was working on were patients that of prominence that were upstanding in the community, and maybe some mayors and governors and blah, 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 blah. My practice really is a potpourri of successful, highly successful business people, principal, financial, president, and the mayors and this and that. Those patients, when you nurture those patients, they refer like-minded patients. And what we used to do is schedule, if we knew that this patient was coming in at 9, we scheduled another prominent one at 10 when he was leaving, when they would see each other, because we knew they knew each other, and then they would tell their friends. And so it was more like, hey, like-minded people. Yet, the other things is I have school teachers, and I have bus drivers, and I have welders that I have to cater to that may not be able to afford to have the dentistry that I want to do, but I don't treat them any different. Yeah. And so you have to have a combination of insurance-based and fee-for-service. Yeah. And that's where I've made a comfortable living doing veneers and implants when it's not covered by insurance, that patients are willing to pay the difference. And especially with if you have a good reputation, it's so important, more than anything else, more than money, and being able to walk around the community and be a good, upstanding, citizen.
Absolutely. Now go back to that, because I want to go back to what you just said, because you're one of the rare people that talks about this very openly. There are a lot of speakers on the circuit that talk about how exclusive or fee for service their practice might be, but you're really transparent. Like, you've got a good balance of fee for service and Delta. You don't have to give us specific, but maybe percentages, like what percentage of your practice is Delta and what percentage of it is fee for service?
I like 67% of my patients are Delta Dental. They have Delta Dental.
Really?
Delta Dental in Iowa is very, very strong. 96% of all dentists in Iowa are members of Delta. 96%. The very few that aren't, I think, have a more difficult time. I write off around 12 to 15% of my total fees across the board every year. So if you do $2.5 million, you're going to write off $300,000 or $350,000. But I look at it as a cost of doing business. As far as some of the write-offs that I do, because, Delta is a big provider, some of the bigger manufacturers. And I'll tell you this, Kirk, I've lost patients. For dentists out there who feel bad about losing a patient, I've lost patients over $10 because I'm not on their insurance, and now they got to pay $10 more to have their teeth cleaned. I don't care how good you are. Patients that are financially, concerned, that don't want to pay the $10, obviously don't value you. What Dr. Polydorn used to say to me, he would say, I'm not offended if a patient leaves my practice for money or financial, because sometimes you can't control that. But I am offended if somebody would leave my practice because my dentistry was substandard or subpar. He says, always offer the best. He says, listen, don't biopsy patients' wallets.
Yeah.
I'll always offer the best treatment. And if they don't, then, okay, can we do this? Right. And don't get discouraged as a young dentist when you're given a treatment plan and they can't afford it. We have low self-esteem because when patients reject us, we look at it like, oh, they don't like us or they're rejecting us. And it's not about that. It's about money and what they can afford or what they value.
Right. And that's one of the things you've just taught me really, really well, is you don't attach yourself to how the patient responds. You're just attached to being authentic, telling them the truth, and then letting them decide. And that's a huge transformation for any dentist to make along their career.
Yeah, I do believe the authenticity. I think you need to have some scripts where you can learn how to talk, but I think you have to be empathetic too to the patients and try to make alternative treatments. Like, if I can do a rehabilitation but build the posterior teeth up with composite to alter the vertical, and then come back and do the front teeth this year and then do another quadrant the next year. That's why places like Seattle Study Club and the Coyce Center offer the ability to understand occlusion and how to stage cases. Because, Kirk, every year I have 4 or 5 cases going that I'm staging over a 2 or 3 year period for $40,000 to $50,000. Because I don't get the patient that comes in and says, here's $50,000. If I get 2 or 3 patients a year to have a full mouth reconstruction, that's a great year for me. Yeah, I'm not making my money doing, that type of dentistry. And when Ritter and I talk, we talk about cutting smile design, which is 10 teeth or more. We don't make our money doing that. We're making our money doing restorative single tooth dentistry or quadrant dentistry. Even though I offer full mouth dentistry, patients may not be able to afford it.
Right. That's very important. I want to talk about the trends of that and where you think dentistry is headed with that in just a second. But I want to go back to just the right patients, because another key that you talked about earlier is just the number of hours that you work. It's not about, because there's a lot of dentists, and you get to see this. You mentioned you were working 7 days a week when you started. I see so many young dentists now that are being taught be open on Saturdays, Sundays, evenings to accommodate patients and grow practice. You don't have to see patients at 9 o'clock at night. If I'm a young dentist watching this, what would you say to that concept?
My concept would be this. It's not even about all the new patients and the hundreds of new patients you get a month. If I could get 100% of my patients to accept the treatment that they need, I don't need to get a bunch of new patients. I don't need to work all these days. My goal is to be efficient in the 3 days that I'm working. I don't think any dentist should work 5 days a week. I think and especially Saturdays, because the patients will come to you if they value you as a dentist. If they think, hey, this guy's the best. I mean, I have like sometimes a 3 and 4 month waiting period to even get into my office. Some patients aren't going to stay and some people will. And they'll call up and I'll try to accommodate them. I might come in at 7 a.m. on that day. But, Kirk, I don't work on a Thursday unless it's a major case. What I'll do is schedule my appointments Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. If somebody wants to have a $10,000 case or a $5,000 case on a Thursday, I'll work there in the morning. But I just really believe that dentistry is a tough enough business that you need downtime. You need time to decompress. And so for me, my income did not go down. I've had 31 years of more profit, even the more time I've taken off. Why is that? I think it's because I've been efficient and patients come in when I'm there.
Right. And Lars is asking a question on Facebook Live. It falls right into our next one. You pick the right people around you, like a lab tech. Lars asked the question, how do you select the lab you want to work with? Price, quality, and experience. Can you answer that?
Yes. Obviously the quality is very, very important. But today it makes it much simpler with automation. When you talk about a milled crown or a zirconia crown, that the technical portion of it from the laboratory or the ceramist has gone away. A lot of it's gone away because we have the machinery to do that. When I say that, how do I pick it? I pick it on price. I pick it on quality. I pick it on the ability to get it done in a proper amount of time. My suggestion would be I work with a local lab probably for 75% of my restorative. My local guy I help train, and he understands how I want my crowns, what the contact should be like. Find a local laboratory that you can work with in the community that does good work at a reasonable price that you can grow with. My laboratory technician now is, he's exceptional. But you have to use a laboratory that's within the parameters of the fee that you're getting. If I'm getting a PPO fee, I can't use something more than $125 to be profitable.
Yeah, having the right lab person is essential. Tell us what some of the trends are you seeing in that area as far as where do you think the lab role will go in the next year or two?
Yeah, right now I think there's probably less than 13 dental laboratory technician schools in the U.S. My nephew I sent to lab tech school about 7 years ago. He came out and they were stacking porcelain. They weren't doing a lot of milling and things, all automated, fully automated crowns. I think the gamers, I think the people who can work with computers and the artists are really the ones that are gonna be successful in the dental technician business, because now they have mills that you can mill so many crowns out in a day that it becomes automated. The sad part for me, for ceramists, my ceramists, think about this. I used to pay $185 to $200 for a porcelain fused to metal crown, and I was getting $1,000. Now I'm getting $1,200 or $1,300, and I'm paying $125 for that fee. The lab fees have come down, but our prices still continue to go up. And what's happened is some of the bigger laboratories, what really sets the fee really for these ceramists is Glidewell. Glidewell is the one that sets the fees because they are automated. They have, tons of dentists who work with them. And so when my local dentist says, I have to charge $175, and I say, well, you got to figure a way that you can get it down to $125, because otherwise I'm going to have to use another laboratory because it comes down to finances.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, another key piece of being successful is just having the right setup around you. Now, it isn't always technology, because you see this, a lot of young dentists coming out, they want the CBCT, they want everything right away. You have some tools and some toys, but you don't need everything right away. Would you agree with that? Or would you say something different?
No, you know what, Kirk? I know you and you're fiscally responsible with your people that you work with. I do not recommend buying a piece of equipment to get a Section 179 deduction. Some guys, they'll say, hey, push this at the end of the year and you're going to be able to write this off. But you know what? I have a cone beam. I have a CBCT. Has it made me money? No, it has not made me money. But it was a piece of equipment that I wanted to incorporate in order to be able to maybe be a better diagnostician.
Right.
Maybe, and so for me, what's important? You need a good electric handpiece. You need good handpiece. You need a good burr. You need magnification. You need good lighting. But besides that, and digital x-rays, things like that, those are going to make you money. And Polydorn used to say to me, I don't care what you spend on your office, but if you're going out and buying a BMW or a boat and this and that, which is a depreciating asset that's making you no money, I'm not for it. If you come to me and say, here, I have $75,000 to pay for this car, buy it. I don't buy a
Right.
car now without paying cash for it. I don't finance it. And I learned that lesson early on. But with dental equipment, like you said, buy things that you're going to use, not just because it's the hottest thing. Because I did have a scanner. I
Right.
bought a scanner, Kirk. But the thing with me in my practice, and I'm not against scanners, I'm not against digital. I work with one dental assistant. The problem was after I got done prepping the tooth, either I would scan it or my assistant would scan it. I wouldn't be working on anybody else. If I had two assistants, then I could go to another room.
Mm-hmm.
I could prep the tooth. They could scan it while I'm working on another patient. So you have to look at the type of practice you have. CAD/CAM, Cerex, I'm not against it. But how much time is it going to take to mill that crown and design it and stain it when you say to me, oh, I have a Cerex, I can do that in an hour and 45 minutes. And they do it in one appointment. Well, you know what? I can do it in an hour and 5 minutes because it takes me an hour to prep it and 5 minutes to seat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're taking an hour and 45 to do the same thing and paying $100,000 for the equipment.
Right.
If you can leave the operatory and have somebody else design and mill and you're working on other patients, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, very well said, buddy. Very well said. Now, another one of your keys is creating the right community around you with a study club and specialists. Give us some thoughts. How important is it to have a study club and the right professionals around you to help you think the right things?
Yeah, let me tell you what. My life changed 10 years ago when I met Michael Cohen, too. Yeah. From a standpoint of I was a lecturer. I thought I was a lecturer. I do state meetings and maybe the midwinter and this and that. But when we met Cohen and, realized that there's something more out there than what I was doing. And the Seattle Study Club and working with specialists had changed my life and it's changed your life, where
Absolutely.
Now you have a lot of people that you can communicate with. One of the things for the young dentist, you look at it, well, it's about $1,995 or $2,500 to belong to a study club. You know what? That's the best money spent. Why? Because they're bringing speakers to you who are going to teach you things. It's all about being able to be successful. Their whole niche is trying to get you to be a much better dentist. And so I would say working with my specialists, I have great endodontists, I have great oral surgeons. It was important to me to align myself with it, and to the point where we did have a Seattle Study Club for a couple of years in Des Moines. Now we're looking at having another one that, really helps all the dentists involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You have to be Michael Cohen and Seattle Study Club single-handedly changed my life. And it's critical. I mean, number one, it's fun. Number two, you're always on the learning cusp. And then you've got the support of the people around you to just keep you moving and thinking in the right direction.
Yeah, because if you don't know what other people are doing, the thing that's kind of disenchanting to me at times, when I come back from a Seattle Study Club and I see what can be done, and the bone that could be grown on a defect, and then I come back and I talk to my surgeon, they may have never seen that before. And that gets them thinking that, wow. And I say, if they can do that, my surgeon can learn to do that. It's going to make my patients better off because we have more tricks in our bag. But if you don't see that somebody can grow 10 millimeters of bone or do a connective tissue graft because you're not taking CE, your patients aren't going to benefit from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So good stuff. Now, another thing that you and I talked about, and we've got a lot of keys here, is you had mentioned, just trying to figure out how you want to practice. A partnership and multi, offices may not be, it's not for everybody. Sometimes young dentists think, well, I got to get a partner, then I got to get another partner and another office. One of the keys here is trying to find the right configuration for you. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what you've learned on that.
Yeah. I started out as an associate. Mm-hmm. Then I was an independent contractor for 11 years. And for me, I would say mergeronomics. Mergeronomics is one of the best ways to build revenue in a practice and make money. Here's why I say that. If you have an existing practice, like myself, after 11 years, I sought out one of the best practices in Des Moines to buy. I didn't need the practice. I had my own practice. But if I could buy somebody's practice and have that dentist stay on with me for a minimum of 5 years, all of a sudden now, instead of doing maybe $1 million a year, now you have another practice and you're doing $2 million a year in the same facility.
Right.
In the same facility, your profitability goes up because the only way you make more money is you got to produce and collect more. with the same amount of people. Because I can tell you this, I collected last year $187,000 more than the year before. Okay. So if you say I have a 50% overhead, then I should have made like 90,000. Well, on my income taxes, I made $134,000 more than I did the year before. Well, you say, how can that be possible? Well, because I collected that much more, my overhead didn't go up. I still paid the rent, still paid the lights, still paid the salaries. It went to the bottom line. And so when you talk about that, I think it's important that when you look at a practice, look at what it's going to cost to service the debt, to pay that practice off, and how much can you net afterwards. You know?
Right, because there's going to be a certain point where your costs kind of settle in. Now, they'll go up a little bit, but not in the same fashion that they will on the lower end of the early phases of it. And that's what you're talking about. So there's a huge upside to being, number one, profitable, also debt-free, which you are. So that's a huge piece of it, too.
The other thing, too, I want to say is this. When you talk about partnerships, when I bought Dr. Polydorn's practice, we were talking about, he says, partnerships fail because I used one paper towel to dry my hands and you used two. When you think about like the supplies, and sometimes when you have an associate that I use a burr 4 or 5 times, when it stops cutting, I throw it away. Associates may use a burr 1 time and throw it away because they're not seeing the overhead. They're just seeing it as a burr, and they throw it away. You need to have some kind of parameters when you have an associate. And when you talk about partnerships, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't want a partner. I don't want my associate to buy in. I really don't. And he doesn't.
Why? Tell us why.
The reason I don't want him to buy in because I am making profit off of him. Most people say, "Oh, I lose money on my associate." My associate says, "Well, you know what? My associate does endodontics. My associate does implants. These are things that I would be sending out that I would not be doing. So anything that I can make on that is gravy." Okay. And so for me as a partner, I want the ability to write off things that maybe if you're a partner, if I go to Costco and maybe I buy some paper towels and I take a roll home, am I stealing from my partner? Probably. But, having a partnership, I think the only time that you should really sell a practice is when you're ready to quit within a couple of years. I don't think you should sell a practice at 55 or 56 when you have the earning ability. I was offered $3 million for my practice, and people say, wow, $3 million. But you know what? If I want to work the next 10 years, I'm going to make more money than the $3 million. And so you got to look at, if you don't want to work and you want to quit, that's one thing. But when you look at partnerships, you have to look at, you got partnerships like a marriage. You got to have the right partner, because I've known partnerships that have not been good.
I think it's tougher than a marriage. So, and the other thing too, I would say this, and I think you would agree there, as a dentist, if you're watching this and you're thinking partner, no partner, just answer this question. Do you like people touching your stuff? And there are dentists that are like, no, I don't like anybody touching my stuff. Well, if you fall in that category, you're probably not partnership material, so.
I have a question for you. Do you like, as a practice management consultant, do you like people to have partnerships if they're like-minded, or do you like someone to be the owner? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I would fall in the same realm as you. Kane Water says that 70 to 90% of all partnerships fail. And associateships fail. We found that too. I don't know if that statistic is the same in our findings, but it's pretty darn close. And most of them fail just because of a failure of expectations and a good working relationship. There are partnerships that work really well, but the expectations are super clear. There's no gray. They understand. And like a great example, 2 of the best is probably Ritter and Ramsey. They have an authentic love for each other. There's no animosity, and there's clear expectations on both sides. And they're in it truly because they love and they want to help the other person. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's been a great partnership. It's an example of, how you can be successful with 2 guys. One could have a bigger ego than the other, and one, and they both lecture. They're both quality dentists, and, they work well together. But a lot of times, if you have one ego that's a little bit different or, higher, there's going to be animosity.
Right.
And when animosity happens, you don't have a good situation.
Hey, and let's be honest, the reason that you're starting a business is that you do have an ego. So it's not that you don't have one. You believe in what you do. You believe that you do it well. And that is often hard to merge with someone else. So that can be a challenge. Now, I would say that somebody that's just in it to run dental businesses and doesn't care so much about how things may be done, they can lower that, that part of them that might irritate them and allow the scaling to happen. And that's a case where you could say, hey, that might be a good fit. But again, if you're watching this, a key piece to anything in life is just figuring out who you are and then building a business to support that. I have a lot of guys that go to Seattle Study Club or Coist or wherever, and they come back and they go, you know what? I'm a single column dentist. That's what I've learned. I have an overflow, but I'm a single column dentist. And, I go, what a beautiful day. Now you don't have to fight against that. And they go, you don't understand. I run 4 columns, though. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a problem.
Absolutely. Listen, if I was, advice to younger dentists, my advice is to get as much education, learn from the dentist you're working with, and get out of an associateship as fast as you can. Find somebody's practice and buy them out. Because you don't get, honestly, if I hired an associate, I'd say my goal for you is for you to have your own practice someday.
Yeah.
You're not going to get wealthy working for somebody as an associate. You can make money, and if you invest your money wisely, you can have a great career. But owning really is the best. Don't look at the dollars. Don't look at, I have the students who say, the dentist wants $1 million for his practice. Oh, $1 million. I said, I don't care if they want 10 million. What's it going to cost to service the debt? Because if I say to you, I want 2 million for my practice, you go, 2 million, that's too much. Well, what if you can net 800,000 and do what you're making 40% on your 2 million right away. There's no clear cut. There's no right way to value it. My best way is look at the numbers. What's it going to cost to service the debt? And can you live on the excess after you service the debt?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the last keys you mentioned is just taking care of yourself, because you got to take care of yourself. Dentistry is not one of those jobs you just go in and do a little work. It's hard on the body. It's hard on the brain. It's hard to, you have to. This is a long haul. Some of you that are watching this, you're going to practice 4 decades, and that requires a good support system. When these are done, you're done.
That's right. And you know what? I do not look at massage as a luxury. I get a minimum. I get Rolfing every Monday. Rolfing is structural integration, where they're stretching your fascia. Every Monday at 5 p.m. after work, I go get Rolfing for an hour and a half. Okay? It costs me $135. Okay? And some people say, they won't spend that. Then on Wednesdays, I'll get a massage, or I'll get a massage somewhere later on the week. I get at least 2 treatments of body work a week. It may cost me $6,000 to $7,000 a year. But you're right. It is hard work. You need to have an exercise plan. You need to work out. You need to take care of yourself, because, necks and back, knock on wood, I've had no neck aches, no back problems, this and that. And, I hope I can continue going on. I honestly, I don't look at quitting till maybe 75,
Yeah.
What am I going to do? When you do it 3 days a week, Kirk, you can do this a long time.
Well, and you're a lot of fun to be with, so I can't see you slowing down on this. Now, I have 2 other big questions. I always love to know this. What's the weirdest thing a patient, you've been doing this for 3, what's the weirdest thing a patient has ever said to you that you're like, whoa, I've never heard that one before,
Let me think about this. I wouldn't say the weirdest thing is, I gave some guy the anesthetic. I gave guy some anesthetic, and I'm drilling him. He feels it. So I give him some more anesthetic, and he's feeling it. And I looked down at him, and after I took the drill out, I took the bit out, the burr out, and I started drilling on his tooth, and he's going, ow, ow. I said, does that hurt? And I'm looking down at him, and he goes, yeah. I said, you felt that? He goes, yeah. I said, well, you know what? I took the burr out. I said, in the yellow pages where it says, we cater to cowards, that's probably the dentist you should go to. And the guy looks back at me. 2 weeks later, he sends his wife in for an appointment. And I'm thinking, either he likes me or he doesn't like his wife. One of the two. But the guy's he's become a good patient. So I don't think I've had anything that's really crazy that I can think of offhand. Maybe the next time we talk, I'll have a better answer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one last one that I always like to ask is because you're out there seeing a lot. You're out there speaking to a study club almost every Friday during the regular lecture season. You're speaking what's the future of dentistry look like? So if I'm a young dentist, I'm 32 and I'm watching this, Bob, what would you say about my future in dentistry? What am I going to see?
I think you're going to see much more corporate. I think you're going to see less private practice. Like the single practitioner, I think is going to be a little bit more difficult. I think you may see a few more group practices or dentists like myself, if I wanted to, buying different practices and then running them as a DSO. But I think you're going to still continue to see like the Heartlands grow. I think you'll see the Aspens grow more than anything. And hopefully like the single or the solo practitioner isn't going to be, it's not going to be the norm anymore. And that's what makes dentistry. That's why we went into this profession, to be our own bosses. I don't necessarily want to work for somebody like that. I'm not against corporate dentistry by any means, but I see it more of a getting out of dental school and working for somebody versus being entrepreneurial. And if it was my advice to you getting out of dental school, don't be scared. If you learn the right techniques and you learn stuff, you can do it. It's, I honestly, I look back in my life and I'd say I don't regret anything, but I would say I wish I would have purchased a practice sooner than being just an independent contractor. I had my own practice within a practice. I wish I would have done it before 11 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you, like me, like many other entrepreneurs, you're virtually unemployable. You're at a point where you couldn't work for anybody else. You get fired if you work for somebody else, I think.
I would. And I like the flexibility of being up here. If you look behind me, look at this. I mean, that's a lake right there. Look at that. Who wouldn't want to wake up to that every day? Come on.
Beautiful.
It's awesome.
Beautiful stuff. Buddy, I know people are going to have questions and are going to want to be able to find you. Now, you've got, if you haven't seen this guy speak, you got to see him speak because he's incredible at what he teaches. And you've got a course coming up in Chicago. Tell us about that. And there's only a few seats left. Where's that at and what are you doing?
It's through CosmoDent. It's the Center for Aesthetic Excellence. It's the only teaching center dedicated strictly to composite resins.
Okay.
And we're doing a 2-day hands-on course on Friday the 8th and 9th of December in Chicago, right on Michigan Avenue, overlooking the Chicago River. It's on composites. It's learning how to increase the vertical dimension with composite resin overlays, how to do an immediate provisionalization on a dental implant, how to do a resin bonded bridge that you fabricate yourself in order to, get patients by that are missing, congenitally missing laterals or they had to have a lateral pulled. And then the other one's going to be on how to do like class 4s and direct composite veneers. It's a full 2 days of just basically hands-on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will post a link to the course. Don't even think about it. Just click on it. Go to it. If you're available, it's fantastic. And any time spent with you is always great, Bob. So how else can we find you now that you have a website? Let's say I do want to find you. Because how do I find you?
Hey, listen, I will give out my personal email because
Oh, you will.
Yeah, I will definitely because I answer every question. I get a lot of questions, and it's easy. It's rcmarge MARGE at AOL.com. I'm still AOL rcmarge at AOL.com. Or if you go to my website, Iowa Dental Group, I will tell you this. I never had any presence ever. on the web ever. I just got a website 2 years ago.
I know we were even debating whether or not you were a real dentist because I was trying to find your number one time and I couldn't find it. I'm like, the guy's not even a dentist.
Hey, and the funny part about it is a friend of mine said, "Hey, you ought to use my SEO guy." I go, "SEO? What is that?" Yeah. and he says, "You don't even have a website." I said, "No." And so I got to throw a shout out to my pal. Cameron Full is his name, Cameron Full. If you just go to Iowa Dental Group or put in, let's say randomly, just put in porcelain veneers Des Moines or implants Des Moines or best dentist Des Moines, this guy got me number one in like 4 or 5 months. I mean, I don't know how he did it, but now I talked to Ritter about Ritter uses him too, and Ritter's going up. And so it's fun to be able to help people who help me. Now, he doesn't take a lot of clients, and I don't even know if he's going to even have time to do any dentists, but I got to thank him publicly for this one because it's people have found me because of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So check him out and find him. And if you have questions for Bob, reach out to him. He's awesome. He will respond to you. And if you, I would always encourage any dentist, take the time, drive down to Des Moines, watch this guy work. He'll let you in his office. You might have a problem after this.
Oh, no. I might. Only one or two at a time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool, buddy. We'll stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But if you're watching today, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate this. And if you enjoyed today, which I know you did, do me a favor and just hit the share button, because we'd love if this great information was out there to just protect this industry, this profession we love so much. That's dentistry. And keep sending us suggestions for shows. We're going to line them up for you, and you'll see them over the next couple of weeks and months. So until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys have a great rest of your day.